Welcome into another edition of Hang Time Podcast. This is Sekou Smith in Atlanta. My main man, John Schumann, is in New Jersey. John Hart's behind the glass. Shu, it's the end of the road. I mean, break out the boys, the men. It's 1 week left in the NBA regular season. It's all coming to an end here, getting ready for the second season shortly. Later in the show, we'll break down our picks for the NBA's award season. Everybody's doing it. Why not us? And we'll get into some details on it. We're not just going to gloss over it. We'll do it Schumann style for sure. First, though, I had a chance to talk with Paul George of the Oklahoma City Thunder. PG talks about the Thunder's playoff push, his MVP criteria, which aren't nearly as detailed as yours, probably, Shu, Russell Westbrook's 2020 game on Tuesday, and a whole lot more. So let's take a listen to that right quick before we break down the awards. Paul George, good to talk to you, man. And I know you in a tough time of year for everybody now, the end of the regular season, trying to get into the postseason. What's been so different for y'all since the All-Star break? Why has it been a little bit tougher now than it has been?
Honestly, I think we bad timing. We hit a wall as a group where we haven't been playing our best, and it just hasn't been good that we finish and we're closing out with the opponents we have to finish this season out. So I think it's a little bit of both. No excuses though. We just haven't been playing well down the stretch. And, it's amplified because of how stacked and how, this thing is coming down to the wire in the West. Yeah. That, it's go time for us. So, we're trying to tune things up. We're trying to figure out our identity. I think it's set in stone that we in the playoffs. Now we're just working on trying to play the right way going down into the playoffs.
Yeah, what's strange too is that you've been playing as well as you have all year. Like, you look at your numbers, they haven't changed. I know there's been so much talk about, you being in the MVP conversation this year and the way your game is elevated. How have you stayed on the grind all year, even with the shoulder and everything else that comes with it?
I think for me, I'm just a team guy. And I owe that to my team, to be honest, to go out and give everything I have and to compete at a high level and just be competitive, regardless of injuries and stuff popping up, nicks and bruises. I think the biggest thing is just going out there to compete and just loving the game. I've been out with injuries before, and I know what it's like to sit out. And if I got the opportunity to play, man, I'm going to go out there and give everything I got.
Yeah. The other night, Russ turns in one of the craziest games I've ever seen. 20 for 20 for 20, triple-double. What was that like? I mean, y'all have done a lot of crazy stuff to both of you, but that was next level. What was it like being out there in the midst of that? And then obviously the emotional reaction that so many people had, obviously with the passing of Nipsey Hussle and what that meant for guys from LA.
I think it was just special to build up. I remember the first quarter looking up and he already had like 10 assists and he had like 7 or 8 rebounds already in the first quarter. And, I'm in my head, I'm like, all right, like this is making out to be an iconic game regardless. And then as the game went on, he just, slowly kept at it, kept chipping away, kept, playing the game, finding guys, asserting itself. And you could just see it was a different fire. It was a different, it was, you could tell and look at somebody when they're going on one of them runs.
Yeah.
And, you just saw it. You just saw it in Russ that this was bigger than that game. Like this meant something. And, we just rallied behind him. We got behind him. We did what we needed to do, to back him up. But, that's, I don't got no words for how he was able to come out and play and because he's one of the ones that got a real close personal relationship with Nipsey. And, I already know how that can be, as far as emotions and, for him to get ready and get us ready and go out there and play at that level, man, it's really no words for that.
Yeah. You and this team, you guys realize, obviously, what's at stake here coming up in the postseason. Does it matter where you matched up? Does it matter who the opponent is, or is it just about locking in and focusing on what you guys are going to do and trying to get done what you need to fulfill whatever your goals are for the postseason?
Yeah, I think it is what it is at this point. The good thing is we locked in. We're playing past, early April. Now I think we just focus on playing the right way, getting back to an identity, and going from there. You know, we know it's going to be tough regardless who we play. And we know in order to get to what we want to get to and have a chance to win a championship, we got to play against Golden State or we got to play against the Denver Nuggets. Those are the two, you know, top teams record-wise in the West. So at some point, we're going to have to see them. So for us, it's not necessarily a matchup that we're running from or that we're not confident about. It's going to be a challenge. But, you know, it's what playoff basketball is about. You got to go against the best to be the best.
No doubt. When you handicap the race, you know, in the past few years, we've all kind of looked at it and said, well, the Warriors head and shoulders above the crowd, and somebody would have to do something crazy, you know, to knock them off. This has been a different regular season for them, though, where it seems like the pack is tighter in the West. Is that real? Like that feeling around the league that, you know, they're going to have to do some different work. Like it's not going to be as much of a cakewalk theoretically for them to get through the playoffs like it has been in the past couple of years.
Yeah, but, you know, I think people, they've obviously, you know, they've been there before now twice going on year 3. So like they know what it is and they know what to expect. So this is not nothing that's catching them by surprise. I think what happened was they lost a lot of their key guys off that bench and their team changed and, you know, now they're facing a different battle, but they still know, you know, what it takes to get to that championship and you know, they know that it's a different level that they got to play in playoffs. So that part I don't really buy into as far as, you know, their off the court stuff and things that's been going on throughout their season. Because again, I mean, the playoffs and regular season, there's a separation. And I think, you know, they've showed that they can take it to another level. So that's really what we got to prepare for, that we're going to see the best of Golden State if that's our matchup. And we got to just be prepared for that.
Is that the craziest part, too? You mentioned the off-the-court stuff and all the social media. How much extra is that to deal with now when you're going through a season, just having all this outside noise and trying to block that out and concentrate and focus on the business? Yeah,
I mean, it's tough. It's tough, but that's you're going to see that a lot. I've dealt with that being in Indiana where, you know, media was going this way, that way, saying, you know, stuff about certain guys not getting along or certain guys doing this, doing that. And, you know, it's as long as the locker room is good and everything is staying within that locker room and there's nobody is looking around at each other with the questions that are coming up through the media that aren't addressed or unanswered, then everybody is good. The locker room is good. What happens when, you know, people start reading and looking into to the media stuff and, you know, now they're second guessing and questioning the guys next to them. That's when you got the problem. So as long as they hash out and they're in a good place and, because I know in Indiana stuff was going on, stuff was being said, and then we looking at each other like, man, we good. Like, I don't know where this is coming from. And that alone was like enough that we had to battle. And it was tiring to, like, you know, have to just hear it nonstop. So, again, as long as everything is just in the open and then there's transparency, then, you know, that locker room would be good.
Yeah. We love to handicap the MVP race in our conversations outside of the league. Do the players, do you guys sit around and look at it? I mean, y'all are human. Y'all know who's doing what. Do y'all sit back and do you sit down and say, well, if Paul George is putting together his ballot like I do for the MVP, where do you rank the seasons that guys have had for the MVP? And I don't mind you putting yourself on there because you're going to be on my ballot. I'll let you know now.
You know, I look at it as the guy that's out there doing whatever it is or whatever his team needs to win. And if that's to score points, then that's what he has to do. If it's to play two ways, that's what he has to do. If it's to connect the whole team and do it on a winning level, like that's what you like. That's everybody is different. Everybody has a different agenda to help their team win. Like I don't look at it myself as just like I got to go out there and score points to win this trophy. Like it's not that, you know, I got bigger goals and you know that's like the sub goal of the whole season. You know, first and foremost is like get to the best point, get to the best place physically, mentally to try to win a championship. And if I'm playing at that level for a full year, then I'll put myself in that position. But I don't think it's really a guideline to, winning that trophy. Like whoever is doing whatever their team needs, that's who should walk away with that trophy.
Right. You know that so much of a season now at this stage of the career for a guy like yourself is based on, like you said, that final goal of trying to win a championship. How much of a grind is it now knowing that that's the, you make all-star teams, you make all-NBA teams, you get big contracts. Now that becomes the one driving force year after year. How much can you chew on that bone now, day after day at this time of year, knowing that's your grind and your motivation?
I think that's what pushes you. That's what keeps you in conversations. That's what keeps you on year after year all-star teams. And, I think that's what keeps you into that loop is chasing the bigger goal. You know what I mean? So I think, that's what I'm training for every summer is like, all right, how can I sustain this and how can I get my body prepared and how can I get my game ready for what's to come later in the year? Like I know what I'm going to bring during the regular season. Mm-hmm. That's the given. But then like the training is like, all right, like how can I prepare for what's to come? Like, and I think that's what I get really like when I'm going through training, I'm already like, when I'm tired, it's like, all right, this is essentially like me in a playoff series. I'm tired, I'm drained, I'm fatigued, I'm sore, I'm hurting. How do I get to a different place mentally to finish this workout? So it's the in between it is what it is. Yeah. I built up that game to get through the regular season. I know what to expect. I know I'm going to be guarded. Now it's like, all right, now I need to prepare for the later run, and that's getting into the playoffs and going deep in the playoffs and trying to win a championship.
No doubt. Finally, before we let you go, PG, man, and I appreciate you so much taking the time. You promote Old Spice, all new fresh collector, featuring 5 new body washes with real benefits forged by real ingredients like moisturizer with shea butter. Man, I'm picky about my stuff. What's your go-to fragrance that you got to have when you're messing with it?
I definitely got to have shea butter. You got to.
Can't get ashy.
You can't get ashy. I mean, I think it's important that men moisturize as much as the women do. I think that's what got me into that is my girl using shea butter and her, me having to use her body wash and her getting mad at me. So now I think it's dope that I have my own to go to. And it is honestly dope that Old Spice highlight men having skin too and campaigning behind that.
No doubt, man. Well, look, we appreciate it. We're going to be watching y'all throughout the course of these playoffs, man. It's going to be interesting as always for you, Russ, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, man. Paul George joining us here on the Hang Time Podcast. We appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely, bro. Appreciate you.
You got to appreciate Paul George's perspective on what could be a very interesting postseason for he and the Thunder. We don't know exactly where they finish, but it doesn't sound like he's concerned. They feel confident that they're going to be able to turn it up in the playoffs. So we'll see. As I mentioned when I was talking to him, though, he's on my ballot. He's on my MVP ballot. He's going to be one of my top 5 guys. I think his season has warranted that. In our round of award pick, Shu, what is the makeup of your top 5 candidates on your ballot?
Number 1 for me is Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'll just say this. The case for James Harden is strong, and it's about usage and how good his team has been offensively with him carrying the second highest usage rate of the last 23 years. So we've said this before. We have sort of play-by-play data, shot location data for 23 years. And the highest usage rate in that time was Russell Westbrook from 2 seasons ago, which was 40%. James Harden is just a hair behind that. But Westbrook, when he did that 2 seasons ago, which was his MVP season, the Thunder ranked 15th offensively that season. The Rockets this year ranked 2nd. So if you look at actually the top 20 usage rates of the last 23 years, only 3 guys on that list, the top 20, had a high usage rate for a top 5 offense of that season. And 2 of them are James Harden this year and last year.
Right.
And one of them is Carmelo Anthony, actually, the one year the Knicks were good. And so that's the case. Like, he's carrying such a huge load, and he's not just doing it for an average offensive team. He's doing it for the second best offensive team in the league. And the only team that's been better offensively is a team that has Curry, Durant, Klay Thompson, that says a ton. At the same time, Antetokounmpo is, near the top of the league in usage rate. The Bucks are the third ranked offense. And then the Bucks have the number one defense, and he's a big part of that too. And so I think it just comes down to that. I mean, this team is terrific on both ends of the floor, and he's what drives their success on offense, absolutely, and on defense also. He's a big part of why they're such a great defensive team as well.
Right. Is there? I mean, it's a 2-horse race in most people's eye. So is there a big drop off for you after those two in terms of they're the clear 2 front runners, and then those next 3 names on your list?
Yeah, I mean, and I haven't necessarily decided on 3, 4, 5. I'm leaning towards Nikola Jokic at number 3, just for the overall success of the Nuggets and how much of a part of that he is and how much he drives their success. And then after that, I think it's some combination of Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Stephen Curry, I think, on my list. And I picked Curry over Durant. Durant's played more games, but only a couple hundred more minutes total. And I just think Curry is the bigger difference maker on the Warriors with the way they play. He is the engine for their offense. And then Embiid and Paul George, the late season slump has obviously hurt Paul George. He was probably number 3 on my list just as recently as a couple of weeks ago. And I'll have to dig into it a little bit more just to finalize my list. Not that I don't think, it really matters too much. Like with this one, I sort of stress over the 1-2 conversation because obviously it could be a close race. After that, I don't stress too much because I know Harden and Antetokounmpo are going to finish first and second. I'm not too stressed about who I pick 3rd, 4th, and 5th, although I do want to get it right as best I can.
Right. There's been this heated discussion here recently about Harden and Giannis and people trying to make this distinction between, well, all of a sudden now, Harden's so individually brilliant this season that it should somehow supersede our tried and true formula of the best player on the best team getting a huge boost from that. And the fact that Giannis doesn't have to play as many minutes as some guys in that role have had to in the past few years or in the past few cases.
It's because the Bucks kick everybody's butt. I mean, they're really, I'm not blaming Giannis. They've had, more comfortable wins, and he's a reason why.
Yeah. I'm not blaming but I'm saying some people are like, well, they're blowing people out so bad, so it's not just him, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, maybe it's because of him that they've become such a dominant team. Not him solely. Certainly Mike Budenholzer's system has had a lot to do with it. But my thing is I'm not knocking he or Harden to make the case for either one. I'm like, I don't think you have to take away from the other one's great season to make a case for why either one of these guys would be your top pick.
Not at all. I had Harden at last year. The Rockets ranked number 1 offensively last year, and obviously they were a better defensive team last year. And that makes a difference, he's probably not the reason why they're a worse defensive team this year than they were last year. But that's just the way it works sometimes is your MVP candidacy at some point, in some ways it's about how bad your teammates are and how important you are to their success. But also it's can be, you can make the argument about it's how good your teammates are because they obviously, if you have a stronger supporting cast, your team's going to win more games. And then therefore your candidacy is stronger because you're 1st or 2nd in the conference instead of 4th or 5th or whatever. So
right.
It's always, I mean, you can talk yourself in circles really. And yes, my eyes may be different than they were last year in regard to this discussion. I thought Harden was, far and away the candidate or the winner last year.
Right.
And this year it's a tighter race, and maybe defense comes into more of the discussion this year than it did last year in my mind. And I wouldn't fault anybody for voting for Harden. I mean, like I said, I explained it, the usage and the offense. Yeah. I understand that argument completely.
Yeah. My top 5 as of this moment, and of course I'll reveal my final top 5 on the last Kia Race to the MVP ladder on NBA.com next Friday. But my top 5 as of today, Giannis, Harden, Paul George, Steph, and Joel Embiid if I had to turn in a final ballot. I know a lot of people knock Giannis over Harden or Harden over Giannis. I think that's, like you said, you're fine either way. The one that becomes tough is not putting Jokic in a top five. For me, I just think Joel Embiid, I just think every time I try and decide between he and Jokic, that I would rather have Embiid. And I know that sounds crazy because Jokic has been fantastic, and he's so integral to what Denver has done this year.
He's got 15 games on Embiid as far as right now.
Exactly.
As we speak, it's 77 games versus 62 games. So.
I know. So, I know, if you're detracting from somebody not playing as many games, but man,
But Embiid, like the defense is a big difference.
I would just rather have Embiid on both ends over Jokic. So that's the one that gives me pause. Everything else, I think, lines up. Who's your top three for Kia Defensive Player of the Year?
I think I'm going to go with Gobert, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Embiid will be there, and I think Antetokounmpo will be there also.
Mm-hmm.
You already explained it. He's a difference maker on that end of the floor, and so he might be too. With the game's advantage over Embiid, with the Bucks being the number one defensive team in the league, the Sixers being, I think, around 9 or 10 as we speak. I think that makes a difference, and if you look at how many points per 100 possessions a team is allowed with the player on the floor, Antetokounmpo is right near the top. And so basically the Bucks have been at their best defensively with him on the floor. And that's with him, obviously, starting first and third quarters against other starters, where the opponent has stronger offense. And so I think he's going to be on there. Like he could be on three different ballots for me. And I think obviously the MVP is the strongest case, and then Defensive Player of the Year is right there too.
Yeah.
And Paul George will be. I think I haven't filled out my ballot. Obviously, I'll give Paul George some consideration here. I think it is sort of like a 4 or 5 man race with Miles Turner, I think, also in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. I got Rudy, Paul George, Giannis, and Embiid as my 4 choices that I'm sorting through. Whoever gets squeezed out of those top 3 spots would have been just as deserving as the third guy, as far as I'm concerned. It's just a matter of preference and specifics. I think, team defense as opposed to a guy who's just a great individual defender, it's hard to separate them nowadays, Shu, in today's NBA when the offensive players are just exploding and going through the roof.
It's also hard to distinguish between an interior defender and a perimeter defender. They're totally different roles. Yeah, I
think Paul George has been clearly the best perimeter defender when he's on his game, which has been basically all season. Maybe not to the level that a Draymond Green and a Kawhi Leonard have been in the years that they've won Defensive Player of the Year, but certainly as close to that standard as you could get.
And it's why I think Draymond Green can be, if he's playing at his best, he is the best defensive player just because he can be a great perimeter defender and and a rim protector.
Yep, he does both.
And that's huge.
Yeah, I agree.
So he could be the defensive player of the postseason. We might see that. And I think he was
probably would prefer that, yeah. He'd probably prefer that. Now to the category that might be the most difficult to sort through outside of MVP, Shu. Kia Rookie of the Year. I know it was a slam dunk per se for Luka Doncic early on. Has Trae Young given you pause at all to reconsider?
No, I've enjoyed watching him, and I've been really impressed with what he's done basically since January or so. He's already one of the best passers in the league, especially in pick and roll. He knows, he finds angles that other guys do not. He and John Collins are a terrific pick and roll tandem. His decision making has improved quite a bit. He's still a defensive liability, and Luka Doncic has been doing it from day one and really hasn't let up. And so the great thing about it is that you had 2 teams that turned their offense over to rookies and 2 teams that got better offensively this year. And that's amazing, pretty much. Doncic, I think I said this before, has the highest usage rate for a rookie in the last 23 years, which is, and like I said, the Mavs have gotten better offensively. The Hawks have gotten better offensively, and they have 2 rookies leading the way. I think you just distinguish it between the 2 because Doncic has been terrific from day one, and Young really struggled there for the first, 6 to 10 weeks of the season.
His November was deplorable. And I think that turned a lot of people sour on him, but he's been so good down the stretch. that I think there'll be some voters who haven't made their minds up completely yet who maybe could be swayed. I like Luka and Trey 1-2 and DeAndre Ayton, the number 1 pick, quietly at number 3. I don't think he's had nearly as much hoopla as the number 1 pick who's had the kind of solid season he's had would get. He hadn't been in the headlines the way a normal number 1 pick would be because of Luka and just how good Luka's been all season long. And there are a couple other rookies, I think, namely Marvin Bagley III, who didn't get a real shot to get in this race early on and then had some other issues late. But also Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's had a really nice rookie season. I'm not saying these guys are rookies of the year, but I think the class itself overall has been maybe even more robust and a little deeper than I expected.
And I think the guy that would have finished third on my ballot if he stayed healthy was Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah.
He was having a terrific season. He's probably the guy who came in and was a positive impact defender as a rookie. Like the Grizzlies were terrific defensively when he was out there on the floor. He's a good rim protector. And so he could be the best defender of this class for sure. And the future's bright there. But Unfortunately, his season got cut short. And so he still might be on my first team all-rookie ballot, first team all-rookie. I haven't figured that one quite out just yet. But he'll definitely be either first or second team all-rookie despite the shortened season.
Yeah. 6 man is our next category, Shu. We've talked plenty about Lou Williams. It's basically his award. Now he's taking it over from Jamal Crawford. They can just scratch off one name and put the other one on it, basically, every year. Does Lou handle that award again for you based on the fact that he's the best bench scorer in the league?
It's not just about that. I would never want it to be just about that. I'm not one that voted for Jamal Crawford just because he averaged 20 points a game or whatever off the bench. Mm-hmm. You got to be doing it efficiently, and you got to make a difference on your team. And Williams does it efficiently enough. He gets to the line enough where he can make up for, not ranking that high in effective, field goal percentage from the floor. And also the Clippers are better when he's on the floor. And I think that's the true measure of an impactful sixth man is, does he make his team better? And yes, he's a little bit of a defensive liability, but the offensive impact that he's made over the course of the season makes him a pretty easy choice for sixth man.
Who are you've done the research. Who else rises into that conversation on your six man ballot?
I think number 2 on my ballot is Domantas Sabonis. Mm-hmm. He has been awesome for Indiana, another guy who makes an impact, but also, basically the best rebounder among six men, an efficient scorer, not a prolific scorer, obviously, but an efficient one. And I think he makes it. I think he's a good defender as well, and I think that makes a difference. And then Montrezl Harrell will probably be third on my ballot. Right. I think as far as basically all the numbers across the board, he's a step below Sabonis.
Right.
But obviously has been fantastic.
Impact,
for most of the season, until after the Tobias Harris trade, when they sort of fell into a starting lineup that worked, for most of the season, the Clippers were just depending on the Williams-Harrell combination off the bench so much. And it was about both of them, their individual work, but then also their work as a tandem and, their pick and roll play as well.
Most improved shoe is our next category. Plenty of names, to go around based on the seasons guys are having. Who are your top 3 and most improved?
Number 1 is easy. Pascal Siakam.
Yep, totally agree.
He is just, transformed. And I think, the numbers speak to, just his box score numbers are improved, obviously, on a per 36 basis, on a per game basis. His shooting has improved. He's become a much more effective 3-point shooter, as the Nets learned Wednesday night. And then also, the one number that really sticks out is just like the percentage of his buckets that have been assisted has dropped. So it was around, I want to say 72% or something last season. It's gone down to 56%. And it just tells me that he's doing a lot of the work for himself more than he ever has.
Yeah.
After that, I haven't figured out 2 and 3 on my ballot yet. I'm
gonna give you one guy to contemplate putting on your list that I'm putting on mine. Malik Beasley from Denver.
He's an interesting one. Like he barely played last season. And
Right.
and the same thing, you could say the same thing about Monty Morris, like barely played, like didn't register in the Nuggets rotation. And they're both second year players, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Is Beasley a third year guy?
No, Beasley might. Yeah, you're right.
Third
Beasley
year?
might be a
Yeah.
third year guy.
Yeah.
So Beasley, if you want to dismiss the second year, Monty Morris, Thomas Bryant, like those kind of, De'Aaron Fox, those kind of
Right.
guys. I mean, I can see that. Beasley, yeah, he should. I mean, yeah, I mean he's taken a huge step forward. I look at Sabonis again as a most improved candidate. Like if you look at improved rebounding percentage, improved shooting, he's right there among the leaders. And I hate to say it, Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the most improved players in the league. If you just look at his numbers, like per 36, just look at his. I mean, he took rebounding, especially scoring and rebounding, and assists. Like he took jumps in all those things, and defense. He has a bigger effect on the defensive ends of the floor than he did last year.
Yeah.
He might be on my ballot. Like I haven't, it's tough because when we've said it before, like there are multiple stages between a rookie that doesn't play and an MVP candidate. And all these guys have taken different steps. Like Antetokounmpo has gone from all-star to MVP in my mind. Beasley has gone from non-rotation guy to one of the better reserve guards off the bench. And Paul George has gone from, all-star to MVP candidate. Like Antetokounmpo and Paul George have both won the award before, and I don't think that necessarily precludes them from winning it again. And so I'm willing to put either one of those guys on my ballot if I feel like it. I think those are the main names that I've thought of. D'Angelo Russell is there, like as a, you see it. He doesn't register near the top of the list on a lot of the statistical categories. You see his increased maturity for sure, like his ability to sort of rebound from a game where he's benched in the fourth quarter and then have a huge game the next day. But he's just so up and down. I mean, even last night against Toronto, he just had a brutal first half, actually brutal first three quarters, and then caught fire in the fourth, and that got the Nets back in the game. They ultimately lost. He has, even on their road trip, he had that incredible fourth quarter against Sacramento. And then, I was at their game in Philadelphia and he was absolutely terrible. And so, he remains a tough guy to quantify, whether you're just talking about most improved or you're just talking about him in general and how much money he should get in free agency this year. But I think that's my sort of list of candidates, and I'll have to figure out who the top three are. But I know Siakam will be number one.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get a ton of argument from a lot of people about Siakam being the one of the clear-cut guys, if not the clear-cut guy. Before we get into our next category, you got a Schumann stat for me this week?
I do. So we have a little bit of trivia, and it's going to sort of lead into our next discussion. So that's why I wanted to bring it up now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here is your trivia. Who are the three most improved offensive teams from last season in regard to points scored per 100 possessions? So efficiency.
Milwaukee.
No, they're number 4 in regard to offensive improvement. They went from 108.8 to 113.5, from 10th to 3rd in offensive efficiency.
Look, let's just make this an open book exam.
All three teams are in the Western Conference. I'll give you that.
Okay. Denver.
No.
Jeez.
They barely budged offensively. Actually, their improvement.
So their defense is what's gotten so much better.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like cheating. I don't want to look it up. Then
Western Conference. What team
takes away some of the luster?
What team took a huge step forward this season? Is not going to make the playoffs, but absolutely took a
Sacramento.
Right, correct. They went from 29th offensively to 18th offensively, an increase of 6.3 points per 100 possessions. They're the most improved offensive team. Number 2 is a playoff team that sort of went from being a top 10 defensive team last year to a top 5 offensive team this year. So they sort of changed their
stripes a little bit. Yeah. What about Utah?
Nope.
Not Utah. What about, I know there's only so many Western Conference teams. I could whittle this down. At some point, I'll wear you down.
Actually, both of these teams sort of went from being stronger on the other one on defense to stronger on offense. Both in the playoffs.
Oklahoma City.
Nope.
Damn. This doesn't make any sense to me then.
Number 2, Portland.
Portland can't be.
Portland went from 13th in offense last season to 4th in offense this season.
The fourth best
increase of 5. Yes, increase of 5.1 points per 100 possessions. And then San Antonio went from 17th in offense to 7th in offense, increase of 4.9 points per 100 possessions.
Those aren't the teams I would have even guessed.
Yeah, well, San Antonio took a huge step backward defensively. They're possibly ranking in the bottom 10 defensively for the first time since before they drafted Tim Duncan. All right, now on the defensive end, most improved defenses. You already guessed one for offense, and actually all the top 3 you all guessed on the offensive end and are wrong. I think actually 2 of them you guessed on the offensive and were wrong. Number 1 should be fairly easy. Most defensive.
Wait a minute, are these Western Conference teams again, or are this?
We have 2 West, 1 East. Number 1 most improved defensive team is in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee, correct. They went from 18th to 1st on defense, allowing 4.6 fewer points per 100 possessions than they did last season.
Okay.
And the league average went up 1.8 points per 100 possessions. So like going down 4.6 is like improving more than 6, versus the league average. All right, Number 2 is Western Conference team did not make the playoffs, but was a better team. Was maybe one of the most improved teams in the league. Looked strong early in the season and then sort of fell off and then traded one of their best players.
Memphis Grizzlies.
Memphis, correct. They went from 26th defensively to 9th. They're still a top 10 defensive team. They've allowed 2.5 points per 100 possessions fewer points per 100 possessions than they did last season. And number 3 is a Western Conference playoff team that you guessed in the offense.
Oklahoma City.
Nope.
Yeah. Defensive.
Went from 23rd defensively to 10th. Denver, correct. Yeah. 2.1 fewer points per 100 possessions than they allowed last year. All right, so Coach of the Year, I mentioned Milwaukee was the most improved defensive team. Their 4th most improved offensive team. Barely.
I'm trying to see how you're going to tie all this in. Let's go.
Didn't make many changes personnel-wise, so that's why, for me, Mike Budenholzer is number 1 for sure on my Coach of the Year ballot.
Yeah, all right.
And number 2, I think I'm gonna lean Doc Rivers for number 2. With the state of that roster and the ability, they could finish anywhere from 5th to 8th in the West, and I don't think that's going to make a difference to me. Right now, they're 6th as we speak. I think there's the one team I think that has had me shaking my head. Like, how are they doing this more than any? And we've said it before. One player on this roster was on this roster 2 seasons ago. That's Luc Mbah a Moute. He hasn't played all season.
Right.
A bunch of these guys are free agents. Like, they could be playing for that. That he's got them all playing for each other and playing together is fantastic. That's why I think he's going to be number 2 on my ballot.
All right.
And after that, I am open to ideas. I think it could be Mike Malone. It could be Nate McMillan. I think it might be Nate McMillan for my 3rd one. I would give Kenny Atkinson maybe a consideration in another year if there weren't these other candidates there.
I'm surprised nobody mentions Nick Nurse, but I guess that's more about Masai's move than it is.
I think so. And you know what? They just haven't been. They were a better regular season team last year. They were.
Right.
I mean, and it's about the regular season, and they were a top 5 team on both ends of the floor last year.
Right.
And this year they're not. So, and that's okay. It's fine. The test will be the postseason, and they've obviously rested Kawhi Leonard quite a bit, and Kyle Lowry's been injured. I don't necessarily think Nick Nurse is a worse coach than Dwayne Casey, and I don't necessarily think he's a better coach. I just think it's a different kind of season, and there's not much of a case, especially when you've got all these other candidates.
Yeah, I think my pool of candidates for Coach of the Year, Bud, Doc, Nate McMillan, Mike Malone will be my main 4 guys. I'm kind of deciding on Which order they go in, I have not determined yet. Bud looks like a favorite, though, but still not 100% sure how I'm going to shuffle the board on Coach of the Year. Our last category, Shu, is Executive of the Year, and I've already got Masai Ujiri sitting in the pole position on my list. I did the minute he pulled the deal for Kawhi Leonard, and if it goes right, Masai will have bagged this award based on just the sheer guts it took to do it. And it's proven to be a pretty substantial move. But there was so much activity throughout the course of the season. I'm wondering, does someone off the main road of executives dive into this mix based on the trade deadline and what we saw go down? Does an Elton Brand or somebody like that get into the fray based on the moves that were made during the course of the season?
Oh, how about Lawrence Frank? The Clippers got better than the Clippers improved more at the deadline than the Sixers did.
Yeah, I mean, in a move that people didn't think was a get better move.
Yeah, we don't have to vote. We don't vote for Executive of the Year. I haven't really thought
we
about
do
it.
here. We do now.
It's a tough. I guess Masai Ujiri is your sort of number one candidate.
It's hard to give somebody in Denver credit for the front office moves when they've had so much organic growth and gotten so much better, with their same core group. So
yeah, I'm just trying to look down the list, and the Clippers have set themselves up well for this summer. And so maybe that's when Lawrence Frank or gets the credit for what they've done. Maybe he's a candidate next summer if they make the splash in free agency. And really, there's a lot of teams that could change fortunes this summer. So next year's Executive of the Year might be more interesting than last year. It'd be tough. Hey, the Lakers got LeBron, but I don't think Magic Johnson's gonna get any votes for this award. Milwaukee.
Yeah.
John Horst.
You're not going to give. Could somebody get the MVP, the Coach of the Year, and Executive? It'd be a hell of a run, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that if you're going to break down the credit for their season, I think yes, Budenholzer and Antetokounmpo probably take 90% of the credit. For
what about Sean Marks? With Brooklyn getting in, what about the job the Nets had?
Yeah, but that's another one where it's sort of setting yourself up for the future.
Right.
He's done. I think a lot of the credit goes more to their coaching staff and the player development side of it. Although he has, made some smart moves in the last year or so.
Just interesting. I'll let you marinate on that one amongst all the other things you got to get done between now and next week.
I focus on the stuff on the court. I'm thankful I don't have to vote for that award.
Well, be sure to check out NBA.com for all the Shu's detailed analysis on all of the major awards that we do have to vote for. Interesting stuff, Shu. Appreciate it as always. Appreciate Paul George taking a few minutes out of his busy schedule to join us on this week's Hang Time podcast. We'll be back on Monday with the final power rankings of the season, Shu. I'm expecting some fireworks from you. I need some serious show-stopping information on all 30 teams. The Kia Race to the MVP ladder is out on Friday on NBA.com. Make sure you check that out. Be sure to subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. For new episodes all season long, we're not going anywhere. The regular season's coming to an end. We'll be here every step of the way through the playoffs in the summer league, draft, free agency, you name it. We're not going anywhere. So make sure you leave a review. And for John Schumann in New Jersey, John Hartzell, our producer, this is Sekou Smith in Atlanta. We will see you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast.
Thank you.